Hi guys, welcome back to Less is More. My name is Dan Wellman, and today we're going to look at the epic grid generation technique employed by Twitter's Bootstrap framework. One of Bootstrap's authors, Fat, came up with a novel solution to generate a series of class names using a recursive mixin to output not only the values but the class names as well. So to tie up this series, we'll take a quick look at a simplified version of this technique. So if we just look at some of the less files that are used by Twitter's Bootstrap. So we'll just head on over to GitHub. And we'll just take a look at the Bootstrap project. And if we look in the less folder, there's a file in here called mixins. And if we go right down to the grid section here, you can see there's a namespace in use. And this code here, this is the awesomeness of the recursive mixin. So this code here will generate all of the CSS used in the grid. So if we just take a look at the source of Bootstrap, all of these span classes here, the span 12, span 11, span 10, and so on and so forth, all of these classes and their values are output by those couple of lines of code that we just looked at. I think that's pretty awesome. So let's recreate that in our less file so that we can see exactly how it does it. So we can go back to using Crunch for this part. We're not actually going to use the CSS we generate. It's just an exercise to see how it's generated. So we'll get rid of that JavaScript expression that will throw an error. So we start out by defining the loop itself. And this is constructed from a simple guarded parametric mixin. So we looked at those in an earlier part. So we'll call our mixin grid, and it will accept an argument called index, and we can also specify an argument called colWidth, and we'll set a default value of 80, and we'll say when the index is greater than 0, do the stuff in the brackets. So we should also add another branch to the mixin for when the index is not greater than 0. So we call this grid as well because it's part of the same mixin. And this one will have 0, and it may also have a column width. So we can use the any variable here as well. And we just specify nothing here within the bracket. So the loop will stop when it hits 0 because it will get to the 0 part of the mixin and there's nothing in between the curly brackets, so it just won't do anything at all. It won't throw an error, it will just stop. So the first thing that we want to do inside the main part of the mixin is to generate the selectors. So we can do that with the following snippet of code, which I'll just add now. So this is the selector that's going to be written, and each selector will have an index number based on the current index, and it's encapsulated in quotes so that we can use interpolation, and then the quotes are removed by escaping them with the tilde. So the curly brackets are literal, they will be output following the name of the class that we're generating. So then inside of them we want to actually add the style declarations. So we can create a new variable called width, and that will be equal to the current index multiplied by the column width. And then we can just use our variable as the value of the width property. And we need to use interpolation here as well because we need to put the characters px onto the end of our width. So we'll escape some quotes. And we'll just do that. So surprisingly, that is all we actually need. So now all we need to do is call the mixin, and it will output the grid class names for us. So all we need to do now is add the recursion. So inside of the main branch of the mixin, we need to call the mixin again. This time we'll subtract 1 from the index. So the index will gradually get smaller each time it's called. And there may be a column width, so if there is, we'll use that as well. And it's as simple as that. These few lines of code will now generate an entire grid system for us. So all we have to do is trigger the loop, and we can do that with this. So we could make a 12 column grid where each column is 80 pixels wide just by doing that. So if we compile that and now look at our CSS file, there we go, an entire grid. And if we wanted to use a non-standard column width, we could pass in the column width as the second argument. And now our columns are 100 pixels wide instead of 80. So in this part of the series, we looked at a practical and fairly advanced usage of less to automatically generate a grid for us, including all of the selectors and the style properties and values. So this is a simplified version of the grid generation that's used in Twitter's Bootstrap. It's probably one of the best examples of the power of less. In the next and final part of this series, we'll recap over everything we've learned so far throughout the course. Thanks for watching.